Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another episode of Endurance Chat. I'm Michael Zalavari, and today we are gearing up for the first major endurance race of the year, the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. And joining me today, I have two very, very happy Americans. We've got Austin Zetzman and Chris Washer. Good evening, lads.
Hello!
Welcome to Season 7.
Attempt for the second episode of Season 7.
Yes, we've had to do it again because we just can't stay on topic for even a moment. But guys, Daytona, it's coming up soon. It's like a week and a bit away, and the first major endurance race of the year, it's oh boy howdy, it's coming.
No, we don't have to wait that long because this weekend is the Roar Prototype Challenge on Saturday and the qualifying race for the Rolex 24 on Sunday. So it's not that long until we see on-track action at Daytona.
And just for a bit of context, the Roar is like the preseason test / qualifying. Like, it's a pretty weird event to have a week out from the season.
Yep. So week before actual Rolex 24 Saturday happens, they'll have a qualifying session to set up the grid for the qualifying race on Sunday. And then on Sunday, they'll have, I believe it's an hour, 45-minute race. And basically the results of that race will set up the grid for the actual 24-hour race the following weekend.
Cool. So that'll be coming up soon. We'll probably have this podcast, at least one part, put up by then, because there is so much happening this weekend with, 61 cars in the entry list and, experiences to share from both Austin and Chris at the track at Daytona, and even Kiwi, who's here and around. We might get him on as well to share his experience. That we're going to do this in probably two parts. I don't think it's going to be palatable to have a 3.5 hour podcast for everyone to listen to in one go. So two parts is going to be the way we go today. And of course, we wouldn't be able to do this without help from our good friends at TheRacingLine.App, your motorsport calendar. They'll keep you all abreast of when all the sessions are for the Raw and for the Rolex 24 and all the support categories, Prototype Challenge, Michelin Pilot Challenge, all those sort of things, because they've also got a 4-hour race next weekend as well. And they're jumping on board to support us again this year. So very happy to have them on board. And you should get on board with them as well. Guys, season 2022 of IMSA, there's been a few off-season changes that we've got to go through before we dive into what this season's going to be. Firstly, DPI has been squished down to 2 manufacturers after Mazda finished up their program last year. They finished it up in quite stunning fashion with a win at Petit Le Mans, a very well-fought win at Petit Le Mans. Guys, Mazda's program in DPI, how does that make you feel, knowing that they went out on a high?
I'm glad I went out on a high because obviously when they first started, at least from my knowledge in 2014, known as Speed Source with the diesel engine, obviously we all know how that turned out, and the years and years of bad luck and fires and just miscalculations, and it was nice to see them win. Obviously at the 6 hours at the Glen. And that kind of snowballed there into more success. And as soon as they are finally starting to do really good consistently, they just pulled the plug in the program. And obviously now that Mazda is just going to focus on their grassroots effort, like their Mazda MX-5 and other club racing events in the States, putting more money towards that. So they're not pulling out entirely out of racing. They're just not doing any pro racing. So we'll still see Mazda, just not in the big leagues.
And that program went through a litany of changes as well. As you mentioned, the Speed Source diesel engine, and then into the sort of petrol-powered prototype, and then into the DPI series. Cookie, it looked like for a while success wasn't ever going to come for them. They just seemed to keep making mistakes from good positions until finally the barrier was broken.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, that's what's going to happen when you have balanced performance, and that's the class that you're in. I feel like that was the least reliable prototype we've had in a long time competing in IMSA. So, for it to still be racing around without not having won things and basically constantly be broken. Usually by that time, you're done with the program. So, I think, just for them sticking around for however long that they have been able to do it was great. And, this program had its, Genesis and starting seasons in Grand Am and, you know, in the GX class and stuff, where they were just basically running GT, you know, like Skyactiv engine prototype cars for a while there too. So, yeah, I mean, it typically happens to that entire program as it has sunset, but you know, now we really have a lot of competition in DPR this year.
Yeah,
this last year, I should say.
Yeah, so of course, with LMDH on the horizon, it's been Mazda's made the decision that they're not going to do LMDH. So this is a nice sort of exit point for them. Another massive change we've had over the off season is the closure of the GT Le Mans class, running the GTE machines that we've been familiar with in the World Endurance Championship and European Le Mans Series and all those sort of feeder series in the ACO ladder. With Porsche finishing their program there, BMW finishing their program there, and Corvette now being sort of in no man's land and jumping over the WEC, GT Le Mans is no more, but we have a big change in that class where it's now GTD Pro. So GT3 machines with full pro lineups. Kris, your thoughts? Do you think this is a good change for the category?
I think I do, because obviously we've seen last year we only had 3 full-time cars running. And now we see at Daytona, we have more than 10, at least for Daytona. That's more than we had last year. And the fact that GT3s, you know, they're more accessible, they're cheaper, and they're going to be more enticing for manufacturers and teams to join in when they can just bring a GT3 over and put the pro drivers in instead of having to get a completely different specification of car to go across the Atlantic. So I think this is going to be a good change, especially because GTE is obviously phasing out, and so IMSA is getting ahead of the curve. And especially with, I mean, look at the teams we got in GTE Pro, not to try to get ahead of ourselves here, but like KCMG and Corvette and BMW, Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. It's definitely a good step up. I think it's a good move towards the future of GT racing.
And Cookie, 13 cars in GTD Pro to go along with 22 cars in GTD, as we knew it before. That is a scarily huge lineup. That would rival most SRO grids, especially in the States.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unexpected, especially because we've had so long of the SRO series or category itself for GT3 for, you know, pushing over, you know, I don't know, definitely over a decade, closing on 2. So, you know, the stability of the GT category specifically from an international standpoint is there. You know, we snubbed the Creventic 24 Hours of Dubai, but I mean, they're also rocking the same thing. These BMWs that'll be competing here for the Pro Series basically got, you know, tested just, you know, a few days ago, basically. So, you know, we're going to see this class kind of being another avenue to more professional outlets or GT teams being able to showcase their worth in North America or taking the opportunities to premiere their new equipment at a huge marquee event. So yeah, there's just a lot of different advantages that IMSA can kind of, you know, use GTD Pro, I guess is how we're going to say it, in the future here. But yeah, I mean, the entries that we see here are reflective of kind of what we're going to be seeing hopefully in the future, whether that's going to be in the prototype category where we have, you know, BMW going to step up there, or there's other GTD AM entries starting to see the pro side of it, like FAF and even Proton. So I do like where we're kind of heading. You know, it's that same argument too that I wish we had some other thing that was in between GT, or what is it, GT3, I guess. But this is the best that we got, and honestly, the interest that we have right now is you know, is really good. So
yeah,
there definitely could have been a nightmare scenario where we had GTD and Pro and not had enough entries, or had the same amount, which I would have not liked that. But this is definitely where we wanted.
Absolutely.
The car count to be, I should say.
Absolutely. With 13 entries in GTD Pro, 22 entries in GTD, that's 35 GT cars. Then you tack onto that 9 LMP3s, 10 LMP2s, and 7 DPIs, and that's a 61 car grid for the Rolex 24. 61! That is huge. That is the biggest Rolex grid that we've seen in 5 years. And
It would have been the biggest since 2014 when the ALMS and Grand Am merged, and that year we had 67 cars.
geez, Pete, that is a huge amount of entries. And after a few quiet years in terms of chaos, where we've had like 2 or 3 cautions over a 24-hour event, notwithstanding weather of the past few years, which has thrown a massive spanner in the works. Guys, 61 cars at Daytona. Does that give you the tingles, or is that something a little worrying?
I don't know, because obviously the last time we had this many cars on circuit, we'll have to unfortunately go back to 2014 where the Memo Gidley accident. Yeah. That's one thing that concerns me, but I am hoping for the best. I don't think it's going to be a major issue because once again we see like over that many amount of cars at Dubai every single year, and we don't have as much as those incidents. And I think it's a much bigger speed difference, maybe GT3s and touring cars. We'll have to do the math on that and see if that's correct, but I think we'll be fine. I think obviously with the amount of cars, especially in LMP3, LMP2, GT Daytona, that the AMs might make some dumb moves, but it's not an endurance prototype race until any of that happens now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, so you talk about the 24 hours of Dubai, and that's definitely a different sort of speed. It's all GT3 cars as its maximum. It's also a bit more of a club event, a very AM focused, not something that really has the prestige and the sort of intensity of the Daytona 24. Cookie, your thoughts? Is it too many cars to fit around this track?
No.
Next question. Well, how much space is too little space? It's 5.5 kilometers of circuit, 61 cars. That's less than 100 meters each car.
100 cars. That's right. I don't know. I don't have a lot of. I mean, like from a safety standpoint, yes, I guess like there can only be so many cars that you can fit on the track, and for it to be safe. But it's Daytona. I mean, if this were Mid Ohio or I don't know, that's a whole different subject anyway. But still, like the track width here is not that bad. The infield is a little bit narrow in certain parts, but like there's not a lot of places where there's a gotcha moment kind of with the track. If there are, I'll say disagreements between certain cars at certain spots in the track, like they kind of get rectified without taking the rest of the field out or being in compromised position. And honestly, I think the Memo Gidley accident, like, I mean, there was obviously more potential for there to be a slow GT car at some point, but it was just a very freak accident from the standpoint of where the sun was and all this other stuff. So yeah, I'm not really concerned about car counts in terms of it being from a safety standpoint. I'm just glad it's over 50 from a health standpoint.
What about from a chaos standpoint? There's 22 GTD cars. That's a lot of amateur drivers. 9 additional LMP3 cars.
That's the thing. It's the LMP3. It's not. I don't really have a problem with the AM GT drivers. It would be the LMP3 drivers because that's going to be a whole boatload of fun for them. So, but we'll see. I think the pace difference between GTD Pro and LMP3 should be enough where that they shouldn't really cross paths too much. But from what we've seen from Michelin, Road to Le Mans,
the Road to Le Mans,
Cup, that they definitely can intermingle a bit. So that's where I'm saying, like, if you're worried about chaos, it would probably be from the 9 LMP3 entries, in my opinion. And we have quite a bit of LMP2 entries as well here, so.
And we'll break all them down in a moment. But before we get into that, let's just talk a little bit about the track and the event. It is, of course, the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. It's one of the big 3 endurance races in the calendar, and you might argue that it's a bit less prestigious than Sebring because of the series that's been involved with, but in any case, it's America's premier 24-hour event, and you guys have had some first-hand experience of being at Daytona for the 24 hours. Guys, Cookie, describe the atmosphere of that hour before the start, where you're rolling into you're on the grid effectively and seeing all the cars and intermingling with everyone in that instance. How does that sort of feel?
It's interesting because it's I feel like a few people probably not know what I'm talking about, but like a winter sun kind of thing where it's like really bright, but it's like not a lot of heat kind of thing. I think that's like all the times that I've ever showed up with Daytona, especially the pre-race, like just being there, it's got this weird kind of light to it. Like just the lighting of everything is slightly different just because of like the time of year it is normally. And yeah, every time I usually go, it's like, you're usually in a windbreaker, you're in a jacket, something like that. And so I think like when just asking me that question, like that's the first thing I think about is just kind of like just the temperature, just how the environment is, I guess, beforehand. But it's definitely exciting just because even though it's not packed, like you're still inside this huge stadium complex. Like
Yeah.
you still know that something's about to happen, and obviously with the PA going on and stuff like that. So it's very exciting. And honestly, the last few years when they've allowed people to go on the infield and look at all the cars and stuff like that, and right on the start finish banking straight and all that, and the tri-oval. So it really has given a good ambiance, and you can see how many people are there, because it's a lot of times it's really hard to tell how many people are actually at Daytona watching this race in the infield if you're actually there. So outside of it just being really crowded. So I don't know. That's usually what my experience is at the start. I don't know about Kris though.
Yeah, Kris, what about yourself? You talk about the atmosphere of the infield, and as the race transitions into night, how does it feel like a big sort of community atmosphere in that instance? Or just tell us about your experiences there.
It was just astonishing. You really underestimate how big the place really is until you get there. Obviously, me being there the past 2 days at this point, it was in 2020 when I went, before the whole world got sprung into madness. But especially at the start, you go onto the grid and you just go on. You can only go on the banking of the tri-oval, but you can literally stand on the finish line, where 24 and a half hours later, someone's life is gonna be changed forever by a Rolex watch. And there's obviously, when they tell you to get off the grid, there's a way you can get into the actual stands by opening the wall. They just climb up there, and the stands are just so huge, especially with the new renovation project they did. What would it be, like almost 10 years ago now, or 7 years ago?
Yeah.
Daytona Rising
Like
project.
that.
And it's like a regular sports stadium. Like they have the food like concession stands like built in. They have TVs around. They got like areas with couches, and they got place. It's a huge sports stadium feel. And I've been there once for a 24-hour race, and I still haven't explored all of it. It's so big, and the infield. There's so many places you can pretty much go pretty much anywhere around the track except for the bus stop. That's something I wish would be changed sometime, but it's just, especially as it goes into night and the fireworks happen, and what many people, at least, I don't know, I think Cookie was camping out, but I actually stayed at the track overnight. So I was there for the early morning and very late hours, and just walking around Daytona at like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's so eerie because everything around you is quiet. There's no other people. There's no other sign that, other than campers. There's no other sign that there's other people there. But yet there's a legit car race happening. But it just feels weird because that's the time you're supposed to be sleeping. It's such a weird feeling. But hopefully I can be when LMDH or when LMH happens, I can go there again, because it's a proper experience I want to do again.
Yeah, it must be super eerie being, well, not super eerie, but like that sort of stadium feeling, that bowl of sound of all of the cars just pounding around the speedway. That must be something very different. Because like I've been at racetracks like Bathurst, which you can walk the entire track, but every single piece is kind of its own piece. It's very hard to sort of see connected areas. Or Adelaide, the Clipsal 500, the street circuit, which again is a similar sort of thing. You have that sort of mini amphitheater, but it's all very sort of secluded off by the trees and all the separate sections. To be able to walk around and see this whole track around you, that must be super duper 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 cool. And I am eternally jealous of the two of you and of Kiwi Kris, who made the trip over there in 2020 as well. That would have been quite an astonishing experience, and I can't wait to get over there myself one day. Yes, Kiwi's just saying in the chat, it's super loud thanks to the echoing. So I suspect it just kind of echoes off every surface, wouldn't it?
And the thing is, many people say, because I was the victim of this, because everyone thinks Florida equals warm. Now, for the daytime, that's true, but when the sun hits below that horizon, you better have a jacket on.
Yeah, well, it's the middle of winter over there, isn't it?
It is, but people usually associate, because I was the dumb northerner that thought, oh yeah, it's only going to be like 40 degrees. I've handled worse than that, and I still wore like a jeans and t-shirt. But the thing is, Cookie can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Florida, it's the warm, humid air. It's like the wet air. So when it gets like 40 degrees, it feels much lower than that.
So 40 degrees for people who don't speak American is like 5 degrees Celsius.
Yeah. So it just feels much more colder.
It's mostly
if you don't properly plan for that, it's not going to be a fun time.
So bring your coats if you're going to Daytona, which is, as we said, only a week away. And let's jump into the entry list now, because we know the track. We know about, well, let's talk very quickly about the history of this event. It's seen some incredible moments. Porsche have taken the most wins here, of course. There's, like, in the last 5 years, I think the most striking moment for me was the GT Le Mans win with the Corvettes, like finishing 1-2, separated by 34 thousandths of a second or something mental like that. It's really one of the jewels in the endurance racing calendar, and that shouldn't be like, I rag on Daytona a little bit because, you know, IMSA, etc., and I have my own feelings about how IMSA does their sports car racing, but it is also like the first event that the first endurance race that I ever properly watched, like, in full, back in 2008, when the Brumos Porsche won, and like that completely sold me on Brumos and Porsche in the States and endurance racing, truth be told. So it's something that's got a lot of history in itself as well. It's been running since like 1963, I want to say. Does that sound right?
Yeah, Daytona Continental
3-hour, yeah,
200, I think.
Well, it was the 3-hour for a while, but like, you know, the story of Dan Gurney parking his car at the top of the banking and turning down to win the race because his car was broken, and, you know, the likes of the Porsche 917 and the Ferrari 330p winning races here. It's you know, steeped in endurance racing history, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, it used to just be for like the major endurance race for the start of the season. So you'd see shakedowns for, you know, the lead up. I mean, you know, for the longest time, 12 Hours of Sebring would kind of be the race or the event that people would try to focus on to get ready for Le Mans. But then as you started getting into kind of like Group 5 and that kind of era in the late 60s, 70s, you know, Daytona started becoming more of an actual prominent place to bring your new car and to like have it shake down there, see if you can win it there. It wasn't as demanding as Sebring, but it was still 24 hours. It was still a place to log laps. So, you know, Daytona has had kind of I don't want to say it hasn't had its own identity, but it has had certain, like a place in sports, in the sports car calendar year, which has shifted a little bit every now and then throughout the decades. But yeah, it's in a good spot now, and it's been different at times from the regular sports car endurance calendar. But yeah, the last iteration since 2014, it's been really exciting. A lot of cars and a lot of good races, a lot of good on track excitement. So.
And you got to think about its placement on the calendar, because it's in the end of January, where it's before any major testing's going on for North American Series. So you have, you know, at least in the past, a bunch of NASCAR guys, especially the IndyCar guys, And in the past, we even saw Lance Stroll compete with Chip Ganassi in their Daytona prototype. And it's just a perfect place on the calendar where you just have this mix of different motorsports disciplines or drivers from different motorsports disciplines racing each other on the same track, and you don't really get that anywhere else.
Yeah, it's kind of like the all-star race for the Americas, isn't it? You got IndyCar drivers, NASCAR drivers, sports car drivers, international sports car drivers as well. It is really just the big melting pot of talent, and it's cool that it kind of gets its own little niche at the start of the year to really put that to the fore. Now, let's talk about the cars and the entries. So what we'll do is we'll split it through prototypes and GTs. So that gives us, 25 prototypes and 35 GTs around about, and we'll have a break in the middle and we'll split it up so that way you can listen to it at your own leisure. But this is the prototype entry list. We'll start from the very, very top, the 7 cars in the DPI class. DPI, of course, being the factory modified LMP2 machines with their own bespoke engines and bodywork in them. And there's quite a few interesting things going on in DPI. We've got 5 Cadillacs and 2 Acuras. Let's start with the 2 Cadillac Racing Cadillacs. I believe they're being run by the team that I should definitely know off the top of my head.
Chip Ganassi.
Chip Ganassi, yeah. They're just called Cadillac Racing on the entry list. Of course, they're Chip Ganassi Racing. Of course, running the 01 and the 02. The 01 has Renger van der Zande, Sebastian Bourdais, Scott Dixon, and Alex Palou. And then the 02, the star car, has Earl Bamber, Alex Lynn, Marcus Ericsson, and Kevin Magnussen. Guys, where do we want to start with those two?
Can I just preface before we start? I'm going to just say stacked in every single entry, just so that we don't have this weird confusion of, oh, I said it like halfway through. So
we're throwing back to the absolute beginning when everything was stacked, because everything is stacked. Like,
that is true.
There is no weak link in either of those teams.
I mean, I'm upset that she didn't get that it was Chip Ganassi just because they're 01 and 02.
I know. I'm sorry, Cookie. I know. I'm sorry.
Their thing. That's their thing, man. All the way in the Grand M days when they were running BMW Rileys. Yeah, that was a throwback.
How can I atone for my mistake, Cookie?
Well, you could just tell us which entry do you think is going to perform better than the other at this next event?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I have no strong opinion, because in one car you've got all of the DPI regulars, Renger van der Zande, Sebastian Bourdais, Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, those guys have been racing in the States for a long time, and so they know the cars, they know the series, they know the team. And then the 02, though, is full of star power. Le Mans overall winner Earl Bamber, Alex Lynn, who's raced everything from DPI to GT Le Mans, Marcus Ericsson, Kevin Magnussen, former Formula 1 drivers. It's huge. Chris, what are your thoughts? Out of those 2 cars, who do you reckon's the better one?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, the 01, you have the prototype experience. Renger van der Zande won in 2019-2020 with Wayne Taylor. Sebastian Bourdais had won with Chip Ganassi in GT Le Mans. Also won overall in 2014 with Action Express. Scott Dixon, I mean, how can you compete with that? The Iceman, 6-time IndyCar champion, 51 IndyCar wins, 3rd all-time on the American Open Wheel Racing wins list. And
has won Rolex 24 as well, overall, I believe.
And then you have Alex Palou, which is, current IndyCar champion. Then you have the 02 with Earl Bamber, 2-time Le Mans winner with Porsche, and also won the Rolex. No, he did not win the Rolex. He's a 2019 GT Le Mans champion. And Marcus Ericsson, he won 2 IndyCar races last year. He's also with Chip Ganassi, hence the link. Alex Lynn, he won the 2017 12 Hours of Sebring with Wayne Taylor. And he's also going to race WEC for United in LMP2.
Oh yeah, of course.
And Kevin Magnussen, he was with Chip Ganassi last year for IMSA, and he won 1 race with Chip, and that was Belle Isle. So For FWEC purposes, don't forget to make your FWEC picks.
Absolutely.
I think I'm gonna think the O2.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going spicy.
Even with Scott Dixon in the other car and Ringer van der Zande in the other car, who won together in 2020.
Well, I'm thinking because Kevin Magnussen has experience in the Cadillac, Alex Lynn also experienced with the Cadillac, and Marcus Ericsson, I think he'll be decent. And then you have Earl Bamber, which remember he did drive Petit last year for Chip Ganassi.
That's true.
So I think I can on paper the 01 you can compare the stat sheet. It's definitely a stronger car, but I don't know. I have a feeling the 02 might do it.
How many times has the Chip Ganassi Star Car actually won? Like it's something that Ganassi does, where they've had like the 01 which is their regulars, and their 02 which is just like the All-Star car. But how many times has the All-Star car actually gone on to take a win? I'm looking through the the overall winners, and I can see it was in the mix in 2009. I remember that much, but that was won by the Brumos team. 2013, Montoya, Pruitt, Rojas, and Kimball. Was that a Star car?
Charlie Kimball was racing in IndyCar that year. I do remember one year. I believe it was they had the two NASCAR stars, Jamie McMurray and Kyle Larson. Which Kyle Larson, 2021 NASCAR champion.
2015.
They have an overall win with Chip.
2015, you were saying, Cookie?
Yeah, 2015 they won, I think in 2008 or 7 or 6, something like that, with Montoya. I think they won too. It's won a couple times. Not a lot, but it's won.
So do you reckon... Well, we'll save that conversation for the end, but 01 and 02 definitely a pair to watch. The other Cadillacs are the JDC Miller Motorsports machine, the number 5, running with the Mustang sampling livery, and as well as Wheel and Engineering Racing, which I believe is still Action Express running that machine, the number 31. And Ally Cadillac. And now that's an interesting story. We'll touch on that as well. Let's go through the driver lineups. For the JDC Miller, number 5, Tristan Vautier, Richard Westbrook, Loic Duval, and Ben Keating taking on a few hours in that car. The number 31 has Pipo Derani, Tristan Nunez, and Mike Conway. That's a star-packed lineup. The only lineup of 3 drivers in the car. And then the 48, Mike Rockenfeller, Kamui Kobayashi, Jimmy Johnson, and Jose Maria Lopez. That is a crazy looking team. Of those 3 cars, who do you reckon is going to mount the biggest challenge, Cookie?
48.
48, the Ally Cadillac. That's a star-packed car.
I mean, and I think it's serviced by Action Express too. So as long the only blemish would be Jimmy and how he can do. I mean, as long as he pulls a Jeff Gordon, he's got a shot at winning it, because just the amount of talent that all the other 3 drivers that are going to be in that seat represent is just so ridiculous.
Go ahead, people Chris. Forgot, even me included, that car finished second last year.
Yeah.
So it's not entirely out of range. And the fact you got Jose Maria Lopez, who I believe never raced a DPI before, but obviously raced, Toyota. So he's not exactly half bad. But let's take a look at the 31. They're multiple-time Rolex 24 winners, that team. 2010, 2014, 2018. They also won the IMSA championship last year. And don't forget, I believe they're replacing Felipe Nasr with Tristan Nunez in the car as their lineup.
And Nunez was a refugee of the Mazda program, right?
Yep.
So, again, someone with proven DPI quality. Pipo Derani, we all remember his incredible stint at the end of the 2016 race to win that one. 31, they've had a bit of a weird endurance racing season over the past 2 seasons. They've that driver lineup of Conway, Nunez, and Durrani, or Conway, Nasser, and Durrani in previous seasons looks like it should just beat everything, but the pieces haven't all come together. So what do we expect from Whelen Engineering? Are we waiting on the final piece of the puzzle to finally turn that team into something that's going to dominate?
I don't know, because if you look at every single entry in the DPI field, you could certainly argue a case on why they should win. Yeah. There's star power in every single car. There's WEC drivers, IMSA champions, 7-time IndyCar champions and NASCAR champions, and even with someone may say that Ben Keating might be the weakest guy on this grid for DPIs, but that's not exactly. I mean, he's still pretty dang good. I mean, I think he won the WEC race last year.
Yeah.
I think he beat Jimmy Johnson.
He's also doing double duty.
I say he beats Jimmy Johnson.
Really? That's okay.
Yeah.
Cookie, elaborate. Explain your point.
I don't know, because I feel like Ben's has had way more time, seat time, and he has more confidence in a prototype car, or just any car at this point, than Jimmy does. I don't know. Just Jimmy's whole thing about racing prototypes and open wheels. I mean, it's not like I don't think he can't do it, but I just feel like he doesn't, he's not comfortable yet. And, okay. I mean, that's why I'm giving the nod.
Okay, so
I do raise you a counterpoint, because Ben Keating is doing something that Jimmy Johnson isn't doing. That's pulling double duty. He's also racing the number 52 LMP2. So he's got 2 cars to try to race. Jimmy Johnson.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, from a controversial opinion standpoint. I'm stating that I feel like if you got an empty track and gave him 2 Oreco 7s, Ben Keating is going to somehow beat Jimmy Johnson. I feel like I'm probably wrong, but I'm just gonna disc jockey it and say it.
That is a huge statement. I'll fully agree with you in that Jimmy Johnson is the weakest link in the 48. And we're not disparaging any of his NASCAR achievements. It's just the thought, or was not the thought. It's a different skill set racing a sports car, a prototype in traffic, compared to racing a NASCAR on an oval without that multi-class aspect. Ben Keating is clearly the worst driver in this class, and I mean that with absolutely no disrespect to him, but there is no way that he, as a bronze rated driver, will be anywhere near the likes of anyone else in the class who are full-time professionals. Let's be clear on that. That doesn't mean that car doesn't have a chance. Remember, Ed Brown has a Daytona 24 Hours win at the seat of the number. What was it?
2?
It was the Tequila Patron ESM machine, and it was he did 2 laps under safety car, but that still counts. They've changed the rules now, but with the way that IMSA does their caution procedures and the fact that we have 61 cars, it wouldn't surprise me to see that car get back on the lead lap late in the race. So it's definitely not an anchor for the number 5 car. And Vautier, Westbrook, Duval, they're huge drivers in prototypes as well. We'll leave the Cadillacs now. Look at the Acuras. There's 2 Acuras in the field. Number 10, Wayne Taylor Racing, Konica Minolta, ARX05. Ricky Taylor, Felipe Albuquerque, Alexander Rossi, and Will Stevens in that machine. And then you've got the Meyer Shank Racing with Curb, in the Meyer Shank car, of course. Oliver Jarvis, Tom Blomqvist, Helio Castroneves, and Simon Pagenaud. They're 2 fully platinum driver lineups, and honestly, I can't pick between the 2 of them, because both of them are just filled with power. Ricky Taylor, Felipe Albuquerque have won this race in a Wayne Taylor car before. Alex Rossi, Indy 500 winner. Will Stevens, Formula 1 driver, winner of a bunch of races in LMP2. Did he almost win Le Mans last year, or was that the other car? No, he wasn't in that car. Just crazy talented. I think is he on WRT this year? Oh no, he's with not Dragon Speed, Jota this year, the Mighty 38.
Yep.
And so I maybe put my money on that car, but then you look at the other car, former LMP1 Audi driver Oliver Jarvis, Tom Blomqvist, who won a bunch of races with Jota in LMP2 last season, Helio Castroneves, who's won basically everything in America, Simon Pagenaud, who's won basically everything in America. It's like splitting hairs at this point. Chris, what's your read?
I really do like the 60 car, paint scheme included. If it's anything like the IndyCar side of their team, they're going to make massive strides. Simon Pagenaud, don't forget, former Peugeot driver for their LMP1 program.
Wow, that is a throwback and a half.
2010 American Le Mans Series champion. 2019 Indy 500 winner. So it's not like he doesn't have experience in prototypes. Helio Castroneves, I think it'll be remiss if we forget mentioning about his 4-time Indy 500 accomplishment. Well, I think he's only the third or fourth person to ever do it. He's also a 2008 Petit Le Mans winner in LMP2 for Team Penske.
Wow, that's, again, going back into the archives. That would have been at the Porsche, the Spider.
Yep. And then he was also last year's Rolex 24 winner, if you remember that.
The thing about that, though, Chris, is that in the number 10 car, you have the three other drivers of that lineup in Ricky Taylor, Felipe Albuquerque, and Alex Rossi. Cookie, your thoughts? Is the number 10 or the number 60 the stronger car?
I'll say number 10.
Number 10? Why?
Yep. You got drivers coming back from last year, and they've mixed well. Number 10, that stable knows how to win this race a bunch of times. And I like the 60 car lineup, but there's some names in there that I haven't seen in a while, or at least not necessarily in an Acura. And it's just a bunch of weird hodgepodge of very talented drivers that are like in odd parts of their careers. So I don't know. I'm going to say number 10 for this year. But they're both very good.
Absolutely. For a bit of context as well, of the last 5 years, Wayne Taylor Racing has won 4 of them, including the last 3 in a row. So they certainly know how to win this race. And I think that's a big point that we may be skipping over a little too much. To round out the discussion on DPI, though, who wins, Cadillac or Acura? Which is the stronger chassis, the stronger car?
Cadillac. They have strength in numbers, too.
Cadillac?
They haven't actually fixed the Cadillac is OP at Daytona problem since they brought the new LMP2 DPI category in 2017, so it's Cadillac.
Even though Wayne Taylor won last year in an Acura?
Yep. Yeah. The Cadillac is by far and away the best chassis, and if the Acuras win it, it's only because Cadillac let them.
Okay. With that in mind, who wins?
Chip Ganassi.
01 or 02?
Chip Ganassi wins either way.
We are all Chip on this blessed day.
I'll go with the star car. I'll go 02.
02? Chris, what about you?
I want to double dip in picks here, so I think I'm gonna go with something different. I'm gonna go with the 48. I think the 48's gonna do it. I think because obviously star power wins at Daytona. We had Fernando Alonso win. We had Jeff Gordon win. I think it's time for a Jimmy Johnson win.
Yeah, that's what we need.
That's what we need. Okay, I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm going to say the number 10. I'm going to go, I reckon Wayne Taylor is a proven winner here, and that car is full of proven winners, and so that's what I'm going to go with.
Surprise.
I'd love to see the number 2 win as well. I just think Earl Bamber should just win everything. He should be given everything.
Well, yeah, that's because he runs a Porsche team
down by
you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh wow. Sorry. Yeah. I thought no one knew that logic. So
I'm sorry, Flo, but this is America. We don't do handouts.
The Felipe Albuquerque.
Oh my!
It's like the gospel of New Mexico.
Moving on to the LMP2 class, which, by the way, has seen a great uptick in entries for this event. 10 cars, all of them Orica 07, so we won't see Rick Ware trying to shoehorn a Riley into the mix this year. a few big international teams as well. A few teams coming over from Europe that we'd be familiar with in the WEC. Let's go through the grid first. We've got Tower Motorsports, PL1 Mathiasen Motorsports, ERA Motorsports, United Autosports, and Dragon Speed as your sort of American-based teams. And then you've also got High Class Racing from Denmark, Racing Team Nederland, of course, from Netherlands, and G-Drive Racing by APR, which is Algarve Pro, making the trip over from Portugal. What are your thoughts, quickly, on the international flavour of the LMP2 class coming into this event? Were we expecting to see, half the grid come over from Europe?
I like it. And the fact that High Class is doing the full IMSA season, Racing Team Netherlands doing the full Michelin Endurance Cup season. Obviously, that's because of WEC coming a little bit oversubscribed. They kind of had a writing on the wall that's going to be a bit harder to enter that championship. So they came over to IMSA where they're guaranteed a spot. And I love it. It's going to show. What I'm curious to see is the difference between the international and the American teams. Because obviously the American teams have some good talent in there. I mean the number 11 on its own is pretty good. But we'll see. Obviously, I think LMP2 last year wasn't the most competitive. I think they won by a lap or so. So hopefully, with the bigger grid numbers, we'll see a more competitive race in LMP2.
Absolutely. Cookie, your thoughts on the international flavour and how the Americans are going to stack up? Do you think the international teams are going to be better, or the American-based teams?
I would say international teams, and I think that would be I was just thinking when Kris was talking too about this, that usually, like in the past, we've always kind of had this issue where you get the international flavor, but you don't really get their best from that standpoint. And outside of the really overall category winners, or like ones that are like, hey, we're doing this because this is a better championship, but we're ultimately going to go for Le Mans. Like a lot of these entries are definitely going to try. Or at least have their roots in Europe, but a lot of this is specifically so that they've got a full-time ride, and a lot of this is too just the amount of laps that they log, the amount of screen time they get, ad revenue, that kind of thing. Like, not to say that IMSA has completely turned a corner, and now they're you could basically start driving racing in IMSA and start really seeing your brand being pushed where you need it to, but. I think this does also speak for IMSA itself, being able to garner a lot of these entries. But the thing to note is that I think that, especially in LMP2, when we're going to have these international entries, they're not going to be like these fly-by-night, efforts. They're gonna be these full-time, 110%, bringing as much as you possibly can to win the race kind of deal, which I think is absolutely needed and necessary. But I think we should rightly see whether or not we deserve to or need to or not see maybe the standard or the bar being set to where it should be when it comes to American prototype racing, especially for the American teams. Because I don't know. There's the European, and even the Asian scene in terms of the prototype racing is just so much more advanced. It's so much more mature. That it's going to be interesting to see now when we actually have this kind of talent coming to the U.S. to race. Like I definitely see it being a European team versus European team, something like where we see in the Masteration, the Mans Series, or WC. Like I think that's what we're going to see this year in IMSA, which is good, but it'll hopefully send a message to get the American teams to step up.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is that the LMP2 regulations in IMSA state that you must have a bronze driver and I think also a silver driver, which is something that you don't necessarily see over in Europe and Asia. You do have the flexibility to put in a silver driver and then a pair of professionals. So that might be a reason why the LMP2 impact in IMSA is a bit less. To be honest, I think DPI splitting from LMP2 was what has meant the LMP2 category in IMSA has been such an undersubscribed class. But if we continue to see this sort of uptake in events like this, and teams like Racing Team Netherlands committing to the MEC and High Class committing to the full season. I think it'll start to attract a lot more eyes, which will mean more entries, which will mean more fun. And that's what this class is going to be. It's got a good mix of out and out amateurs as well as the full professionals. And let's take a peek. As I made mention, all of them are in the Orica 07, which is not a surprise at all, but we'll go through each entry as we do. First one off the rank, Tower Motorsport in the number 8 car, and that's got bronze driver John Ferrano, and picked up with a huge amount of talent in that car, Rui Andrade, Louis Delatraz, and Ferdinand von Hatzberg. That is, by the way, one of the 24 Hours of Le Mans winners in LMP2 last year in Ferdinand Hatzberg. That's a pretty decent driver lineup straight off the rank. I mean, Ferrano obviously as the bronze, but Andrade as a silver, and then the pair of professionals. That's a scary looking car straight away.
And for Ferrano, easily to deduce himself as the rich guy of the team, but did some research into him. He's a 2018 European Le Mans Series LMP3 champion with RLR M Sport. Yep. So he's not exactly a bad driver if he can win a championship in the European Le Mans Series, no matter what class you're in. Louis Delatraz and Rui Andrade, both racing in the WEC this year. So you got a relatively decent bronze driver, in my opinion. Then 3 guys who are either European Le Mans Series champions or winners, or WEC or Le Mans winners. It's a very stacked lineup.
Absolutely, and that's going to be one that's going to be adorned with the Tower events, of course, with Ferrano being Ferrano's business. Delatraz, remind me if I'm wrong, does he have LMP1 experience? Did he drive the Ginetta? Or was that Lucas Giotto?
I believe that's Lucas Giotto.
He Delatraz only had LMP2 experience last year at WRT, but he was stalwart in F2 for a few years.
Yeah.
So that's from open wheel background.
That's right. And he also won the European Le Mans Series anyway with WRT as well. So, experience and pace out of the wazoo for the pair of them. Pretty exciting pair of drivers to go in that car. How much do you reckon a pair of ex-WRT drivers are going to cost? If you're John Ferrano and trying to put together a team, how much do you reckon that he's forking up for those 2 drivers?
Probably a lot.
Probably a lot. You'd say so. Next off the rank is the pair of PR1 Matthias and Motorsport cars. One of them will be adorned, of course, in the Wins livery. That'll be the number 52. The other one will have TAFS on the machine. The number 11 will feature Josh Pearson, Stephen Thomas, Jonathan Bomarito, and Harry Tinknell, whereas the number 52 has Scott Huffaker, Ben Keating, Mikkel Jensen, and Nikolai Lapierre. First question, guys. Which one of those 2 is going to be faster and why? Chris, go.
This is tough because with the number 52, you have last year's LMP2 champions. They're the champions last year. Scott Huffaker, he was a young guy. He raced supports. He raced this car last year, so he has experience. Nicolas Lapierre, obviously, everybody knows who he was. Alpine LMH driver.
Yep.
Mikkel Jensen, he was with this team last year also. 2019 ELMS LMP3 champion. He's also going to race Asian Le Mans Series this year with CD Sport in LMP3. And then you have Ben Keating, who needs no introduction. But the 11 is an interesting one because if you know Win Autosport from last year, Win Autosport is basically just merging with this 11 team. So the 11 car is basically Win Autosport, but with the PR1 Matthiasen name.
Okay.
Because Jonathan Bomarito, former Mazda driver, he achieved Rolex 24 class wins back in the Grand Am GT days. Josh Pearson, remember, he's going to be the 16-year-old that's going to be racing at Le Mans with United Autosports. Have you ever seen that floating around?
Yes,
on the
indeed.
internet?
We did make mention of that in our entry preview for season 2022. So that's a big pickup there as well. Interesting to see how it goes. Continue.
Steven Thompson, he was the dude who formed Win Autosport. He's the team owner, basically. And then you have Harry Ticknell. Oh, this guy's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Tinknell, of course, has been driving. Well, I mean, last year he was with Mazda in this race. He's been driving all sorts of different machinery, and to see him in an LMP2 car is an interesting sort of development. Cookie, looking at the two, of course, the 52 has a lot of fan favorite support with Ben Keating behind the wheel, but the 11 looks like a bit of a development car. Do you reckon they'll be in the mix for a good result?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them will be. Just from the amount of talent that they've got behind the wheels. So, I mean, that can make up for a lot of different, potential issues, just teething issues for some of the drivers. But no, I think both of them will have a good shot for being there. At the end of it, it's a 24-hour race, so who knows? And I was kind of thinking the same thing for some of our DPI calls too. So, just some of the picks, I feel like it usually is a while to convince me to like pick the fastest car, like probably on paper, just because it's some, attrition always seems to happen. And I feel like with LMP2 it's going to be like that too. But no, I could definitely see a scenario where both PR1 and Matheson cars are up there in contention. But man, out of any year, this is definitely going to be the toughest for competition for them.
Absolutely. 52 to me, though, looks scary. I mean, not only do you have one of the best bronzes in sports car racing in the world at the moment with Keating, even though he is doing double duty, but Mikkel Jensen about to step into a Peugeot LMH car, and Nicolas Lapierre, who for a while was the unbeatable force in LMP2. He won like every single year he raced in LMP2 at Le Mans until 2020, where he finished a bit further down the order. So, Lapierre's got a serious clap behind him as well. And that car, we did see run into problems last year, but surely if they run trouble-free, that should be on the podium, 52.
I'll go 52 too.
Yeah. Next car on the rank is ERA Motorsports, the crayon car from last year, the race-winning car from last year, it must be said. Paul Lipschutin, Ryan DL, Dwight Merriman, and Kyle Tilley behind the wheel. This was a bit of a surprise last year. No one really expected them to be as much of a player as they ended up being. But, you don't just win Daytona, do you? That's a pretty incredible drive from them, and a great representation for the Americans.
Yeah, and I'm proud to say that I did actually meet one of these drivers in real life. Kyle Tilley. He was at the Road America NASCAR race last year. He was racing the Cup car for Live Fast. He was literally just in the concession stand during one of the supports. I was like, "Hey, you race ELMS next weekend at Monza?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Good luck."
I love those random little interactions. I actually, on that note, I ran into Richie Stanaway at the Bend on the Run, which is like a service station that's literally at the Bend. Like, I was just there getting a coffee after marshalling, and he walked up behind me to get a coffee. I'm like, "Hey man, you're Richie Stanaway." He's like, "Yeah." Can I have a photo? Okay. That was the extent of my interaction with Richie Stanaway. But yeah, it's kind of funny seeing the drivers like that. You got to say though, it was a surprise for them to win last year, considering the driver lineup and the talent of the other cars. However, they've got to be going into this year feeling pretty confident that they can back up after what has been a good season in the IMSA series for them.
Paul Lucic, who won the race last year with them. Ryan DL, he was 2012 Le Mans LMP2 winner, 2010 Rolex 24 overall winner, and for just to cure that obscure racing that you had, Ryan DL is also the 6 hours of Bogota winner.
What?
The classic. The
classic 6 hours of Bogota. Oh, brilliant. We love it, Chris. We love it. Never change. I don't even know where to go from there. Let's go to the next car. Sorry.
You were asking me which driver I thought would use the best paint the best crayon color painting image out of that. I would have to say Paul Chatan. I feel like he's a
master of the crayon.
So he knows. Yeah, he could definitely be very precise with his crayon coloring abilities. So that's my vote.
I love it. Brilliant off-topic conversation. The concern I have for this car, unfortunately, is the bronze driver, Dwight Merriman. Not someone who we've seen be a major player at the front of bronze-rated categories, not someone who really sets the timing screen on a light. To me, that is going to be the anchor for the team to overcome. And like, as we said, we've seen them do it before. They won last year. It's not impossible. But can lightning strike twice?
Well, how competitive was the last year's Asian Le Mans Series LMP2 Pro-Am Championship?
It was not. It was not. They were the only
so
driver.
That explains why Dwight Merriman was the last year's champion in that regard.
So, yeah, the reason being is they were the only entry.
Still counts.
I mean, it still counts. They won the championship. They didn't win a Le Mans invite because there was not enough cars in the entry for them to do that. But it still counts. We'll move on to the next car, the number 20 high-class racing machine. So this is the first of the really international teams that we're going to touch on. This car will have Dennis Anderson and Anders Fjordbak as the two AMs, which is unsurprising considering it's a high-class car. And they will be joined by Nico Muller and Fabio Scherer for the two pro spots. Nico Muller as a DTM driver for Audi. That's been his main squeeze with 10 wins and 32 podiums over his 7-8 year career there. And Fabio Scherer driving for WRT has come across the pond to join that one. And he was driving with United Autosports last year in LMP2, where they picked up 5th place in the championship in the WEC. Kris, what do you reckon? Does the high class team have a proper shot?
It's going to be a tough ask, I think, because Dennis Anderson, I presume, the rich AM guy who's funding the effort. Anders Fjordbak, he's been with high class, I think, even with the ELMS days.
Yep.
When they had Dallara, wasn't
it? They came second in the first two LMP2 17 races in the European Le Mans series at Silverstone and at Monza.
And Fabio Scherer is a good pickup. He's and also Nico Muller. He's going to be racing with the Vector Sport team in LMP2 this year. And also 2015 Nürburgring 24 winner. So two very strong drivers. Anders Fjordbak, I would say he isn't too bad either. It's gonna be interesting. It's just gonna be all down to see how Dennis Anderson does.
Yeah, Fjordbak's actually one of my favorite silver drivers because he seems to have some sort of clout where he doesn't want to get bullied by the pros. And those two drives at the end in 2017, where they came second in the first two races of the European Le Mans series, that kind of sold me on the idea of the team, and especially Fjordbak doing the lion's share of the work there. So happy to see him making strides. Muller and Scherer coming from DTM and open wheelers into LMP2 respectively. Cookie, how much does a DTM sort of platform translate into driving a prototype, do you reckon?
It used to have a lot of relevance when it was the Class 1 and before, but since they went to GT3 last year, it's kind of lost a little bit of that. The only thing I would say is that it's got some professional aspect to it, that there's some, there are some more privateer entries, but there is a professional standpoint and a professional aspect to that series that you could take away from it. But ultimately, there's not going to be a lot unless you had previously driven Class 1 spec cars in DTM. So, but yeah, before that, DTM was very relevant to like a LMP2, LMP3 car. Just the speeds were that high. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd say very little at this point now, unless you're looking for like a professional team aspect from experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mueller was driving DTM since 2014, so he would have had that Class 1 experience, certainly. We'll chuck on to the team that Fabio Scherer has just left to join high class racing. United Autosports running the 22, of course, driving with Phil Hansen, James Maguire, Will Owen, and Guy Smith. A very much United flavour with two Brits and two Americans. Phil Hansen, of course, being upgraded to gold last season, has continued to impress as the gold driver. Guy Smith and Will Owen, Guy Smith running as, I think, the silver in that car. And Will Owen as well as another silver. So Guy Smith, sorry, is still gold rated. And James Maguire is the bronze rated driver. Now, remind me, Maguire, I know that name from IMSA. I just don't remember where. Kris, enlighten me.
From my research, he did Asian Le Mans last year, or at least before. He's like the old dude. So presumably the one funding the effort. But other than that, I can't remember where else maybe he did like Pilot Challenge or he's one of those guys who like been with IMSA for years. But I know for sure he did some Asian Le Mans Series races in the past.
Okay. That kind of settles me a little bit, but the thing I'm tending to notice is, particularly with this car, it doesn't really have a lot of well, I mean, the obvious exception being Guy Smith, but, you know, you'd expect for a United Autosports car to see someone like Job van Uitert or Felipe Albuquerque or Alex Lynn, Paul di Resta, someone with that huge amount of experience that can really settle the young guys around him. It's kind of missing from this team at the moment. Cookie, what's your read? Do you reckon the likes of their driver ladder in Phil Hansen and Will Owen will have the clout to be able to take it to the other LMP2 teams?
I mean, I would say no, just off the immediate basis. Yeah, it just feels a little bit more kind of trial-ish or just a little bit experimental. Not necessarily from like a, we're going out to win this and we want to win it at any cost, but just there seems to be some holes potentially in that lineup for, pace or just something where it would mesh less with some of the other entries in LMP2. So I'll say it's a solid lineup from what we're used to from seeing from IMSA LMP2 standards, but from what we've seen out of the lineups this year for the rest of the entries here, it's going to be a tall order to try to best them on paper.
Yeah, and to combine, sorry, Kris, to combine the likes of Guy Smith and James Maguire, who I've done a quick Google on, has found he's 61 years old, with the youth of Phil Hansen and Will Owen, it might serve a bit of experience and youth in that respect, but you're basically relying on the likes of Hansen to really take the lead on that team. And while he was pretty good last year in LMP2, he did have Felipe Albuquerque backing him up every single step of the way. So it's going to be quite a challenge. Kris, what were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say something else. I noticed that Phil Hansen and Will Owen are going to be racing this with United for WEC. So even if the race doesn't turn out well, it could still be a good opportunity to build that chemistry with each other since they will be sharing a car full time.
Yep.
And also, Guy Smith, don't forget, he's the one that won with Bentley at Le Mans.
That was literally 19 years ago, though.
And 2011 American Le Mans Series LMP1 champion, although that's, the competition there was like, not very. But still, I still think because he has been racing, obviously not at the top level, but I still think he'll be a pretty good shout.
While I agree with you, I think if you compare someone like Guy Smith with, say, a Mikkel Jensen or James Allen or someone like that who's at a similar race, like a similar rating, I don't think Smith has the same level as those guys. But we'll get to that when we get to the end. We've still got at least 4 more cars to go, so we'll crack into Racing Team Netherlands, one of the fan favourites coming over from WEC, the Jumbo machine, with Frits van Aert, of course, the CEO of Jumbo Supermarkets in the Netherlands. He'll be driving with Dylan Murray as the silver driver, Rinus van Kalmthout, which is the name I absolutely butchered.
You would recognize him more as Rinus VK.
Rinus VK, okay. So that's the gold rated driver. And then, of course, Guido van der Garde as the platinum. This isn't quite the same lineup that we've seen in the past from Racing Team Netherlands. No, normally we'd see someone like a Job van Uitert in that team as well. But it still seems to be a pretty solid lineup. Dylan Murray is a name that I'm not immediately familiar with, a USA-based driver. Any thoughts on that one, Kris?
He raced last year in the main LMP3 class with Riley Motorsports. He also did Porsche Carrera Cup North America and Prototype Challenge. So this is a step up for him. Not with the LMP3 cars he's more used to in prototype racing. And then Rinus VK If you remember, he's an IndyCar driver for
Okay.
Ed Carpenter Racing. I believe he won last year at one of the Indy road course races. And then I think he had an injury. I can't remember what the injury was, and he missed a race or two. But glad to see. Hopefully, he's all healed up 100%. And although he did race after the injury last year, so I presume he is. But I think he's a very, very good, solid lineup, and plus he's Dutch. You can't go wrong with that with this team.
Absolutely, it is the Dutch machine in that respect. I wasn't familiar with Rinus VeeKay because I'm not really a IndyCar watcher, but that's a pretty solid lineup then. If you've got a recent IndyCar race winner, someone like Guido van der Garde, who was renowned for being his massive in the first stint. Dylan Murray, who has IMSA sort of experience, and then Fritz van Aert, who, like, despite all of the memes, is actually quite a respectable bronze driver. You know, did win the Pro-Am Championship in the WEC LMP2 last year. So that's certainly going to be one to watch. Cookie, Jumbo have made the jump, well, Racing Team Netherlands made the jump from the WEC to IMSA for these events. Do you think they've made the right decision there? And do you think they've got the star power to be able to challenge for these events?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. These events will, I mean, for what we're seeing right now, it could change in terms of some of the lineups and entries too, for even when we get to Sebring or Watkins Glen after that. So, I think that sure, again, on paper, yes, that they don't have. I think like the quality assurances that you get from like a Ben Keating or something like that, like in every single thing. But honestly, Dylan Murray's decent. Fritz van Aert is solid too. I mean, clearly he can put in some good stints. And then Rinus VeeKay, yeah, I mean, he's making a splash in IndyCar. Definitely forcing Americans to not pronounce his name because he's just given up on that. But yeah, I mean, I would say just from an IndyCar standpoint. In the last year, his name has been talked about all the time. You know, if it's not Palou, he's kind of just like an up-and-coming potential talent. We're not entirely sure if he's going to, challenge for championships and whatnot in the future, but he's one of those drivers to look out for in the future in IndyCar. So it's a good get for them. And again, you add to Dane Train, so can't go wrong there outside of Dylan being from the U.S.
Dane Train or Netter Train?
Oh, sorry. Netter. Netter Train. There you go. One of them.
Very smoothly done there.
It's a vehicle for success.
Classic.
And it's European.
Stop. Brilliant. I am excited to see these guys in IMSA competition. I'm excited to see what they do. It does pain me a little bit to see that they're not doing the WEC. I always love seeing that car at Le Mans and in everything else. But this is a good substitute, and I think it's a good quality field for them to really stretch their legs. 3 more cars left on the entry. 2 from G-Drive by APR, Algarve Pro Racing. One of them, well, they got the 68 and the 69. In the 68, we've got Francois Hero, Ed Jones, which is racing under a UAE flag, which is a name I am not super familiar with, an IndyCar Series driver. Thank you, Wikipedia. Oliver Rasmussen and Rene Rast, which is a very interesting addition to that team. And then in the 69 car, you have the more classic APR team, John Falb, James Allen, Lucas Giotto, and Tijmen van der Helm. Which I probably butchered again, because, again, I don't know how IJ works in Dutch. Of the 2 cars, who do you reckon is the stronger? It's interesting to me to see Francois Hero and Oliver Rasmussen in the same car together, bronze and silver, of course. And then the silver driver, Tijmen van der Helm, he's going to be driving with the WEC team. And he's got John Falb for company as the bronze in there. James Allen and Lucas Giotto, though, that's a good pair of professional drivers.
Yeah, I'd say
Lucas Giotto, he raced with Ginetta, and I'll give you the exact race he raced for Ginetta with. It was 2019 Fuji.
Yep.
So that's what you're looking for earlier on. A couple of these guys, they're pretty much straight from Formula 3. Tijmen van der Helm, 17-year-old kid. He raced FIA F3 last year and FIA I did my correct research, he should be racing for ARC Bratislava this year
Yes.
in WEC. And then you have Oliver Rasmussen, who raced FIA F3 last year with HWA, which is not exactly the best team in that championship. And he's going to be racing for Jota. So some kids straight out of the feeder series, I presume, racing their first prototype race.
Yeah, that would be absolutely right. And then, pair that with the super experience of Rene Rast. And, while James Allen hasn't been the most experienced, the most exciting driver, he put in a cracking pair of stints last year at Le Mans with Panis Racing to get a podium. And then the year prior to that with Graf, where he was terrorizing Felipe Albuquerque in the early parts of the race. So James Allen's obviously got a lot of clout behind him as well. This is actually a pretty solid pair of cars at the moment. Ed Jones, though. Ed Jones is someone that I'm not familiar with at all. Racing... Chris, obviously, you've got the info.
If you're an IndyCar fan, you hate Ed Jones.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
You're walking into that one there, Mike.
I'm going to stay well back from that one then. So I'm guessing everyone likes the 69 then instead.
Nice, by the way.
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
For those who don't know, Ed Jones, I believe, rammed into Pato O'Ward at the season finale last year when Pato O'Ward was contending for the championship, and just basically gave Alex Palou the title.
Oof. Okay, well, I'm going to leave that well enough alone. So we're all fans of the 69 then instead. Everyone forgets the 68 except for Rene Rast, and we'll just be fans of the 69. Chris saying in the chat, we all want a 69. Nice. Last car on the entry list for LMP2 is the number 81 Dragon Speed USA, of course, with the stars and stripes on the side. Not running...
It won't be the stars and stripes. It won't be the stars. It won't be a yellow, I believe, blue and red mixture.
Okay. Fair enough. And that's because we'd normally be used to seeing Heinrich Hedman and Juan Pablo Montoya in that car, but they're not going to be here for Daytona. It
will be for Sebring.
It will be for Sebring.
I know Montoya and his son will be at Sebring.
And then, but for Daytona, it'll be Delvin DeFrancesco, Colin Herter, Eric Lux, and Pato O'Ward, which is names are actually recognized from IMSA, from IndyCar rather.
Yep.
Nice
DeFrancesco will race IndyCar Andretti this year. He raced DPI in 2019 at JDC Miller. Colton Herta also driving for Andretti. 2019 Rolex winner in GT Le Mans with the BMW when it got rained out. Eric Lux, presumed to be the money man. Patrick O'Ward, IndyCar driver for McLaren. Don't forget, he was actually the test driver for McLaren when F1 had their postseason test at Abu Dhabi. And he's also a 2017 Rolex 24 and, I believe, IMSA champion in the Prototype Challenge class.
He's someone with quite a few accolades behind him. Paired up in that driver, he's the gold in that driver. Eric Lux is the bronze. And then you've got Colin Herter and Delvin DeFrancesco. Who is the silver out of those two? Is it Herter? Or is it DeFrancesco?
Maybe, I would presume DeFrancesco, because this is what I believe this will be his first year in IndyCar full time.
Okay. So still a little bit to go then. I'm not sure the IMSA ladder or the IndyCar ladder. How do you rate those guys against the likes of some of the sports car names we've gone through?
Colton Herta and Patrick O'Ward will take the fight. They're good drivers. Multiple time winners in IndyCar. Have either one of them in the car, and they'll do pretty good. Devlin has at least some prototype experience. And then Eric Lux, obviously, been with Dragon Speed for a while. It might, I have to say, it could be the one entry that people sleep on because it doesn't have like the sports car names in it, but it has some very talented IndyCar drivers.
Yeah, for sure. Both of them, like, there's two of them in there that essentially were competing against Palou last year for the IndyCar title. So, I mean, they were the main rivals, if you want to say that, outside of, I guess, Scott Dixon, and they're the quote unquote young guns, I'd say, of IndyCar. Like, you'll be hearing from them. I feel like for the next like 5 years, easy, just them competing against each other. So definitely a great lineup from an IndyCar standpoint. Just to see them all in sports cars like this, yeah, they're definitely something that you could sleep on with that 81.
With that in mind, lads, pick a winner out of those 10 cars. Are you going to promote the 81? Make sure give them a bit of a platform to get people to check them out, or are you going to go for something more traditional, so to speak? Go, Kris first.
I think I'm gonna have to go. It's very tough. I'm gonna go with 81.
81. So you're going to promote the Dragon Speed car and see if they can get to the end or get to the win.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, you must have quite a bit of faith in those IndyCar drivers. Then, what about you, Cookie?
I'll do it 52.
52. That's the Wins PR1 Matheson car with Keating, Jensen, Huffaker, and Lapierre.
Yep.
My eye tends to the 52 as well, but I am pretty well intrigued by the number 8. You know, Ferrano is the bronze, and that's always going to be an anchor. But the likes of Delatraz and Andrade and Habsburg, you know, ELMS and WC champions in that car, that's a pretty attractive pick as well. So, but also the 69 is pretty nice. I'll pick that as my podium then. So my podium is going to be the 69, the 52, and the number 8. Tower Motorsport, G-Drive Racing, and PR1 Mathiasen rather. So that's what I reckon. Any complaints with that?
No, nothing for me. It's probably all going to be wrong, but
I mean, clearly we are at, as people should well know by now, we are, if anything, a beacon of bad luck for these teams. So if you are one of these drivers and you are listening, well, sorry for putting the mocker on you, but what can you expect, really? Also, thank you for listening. Any final comments on LMP2? I've got to say, I'm pretty excited to see such a strong lineup of cars, teams, and drivers in a class that has been undersubscribed in IMSA for a little while. It's good to see that the healthy nature of this class come to the fruition after it was split off from the DPI machines. LMP3, 9 cars in LMP3. This is, of course, the third rung on the ACO ladder in terms of prototypes. First thing that's going to be interesting to me is, will these cars be quicker than the GTD Pro machines? You know, we've seen that Daytona is traditionally very hard for the LMP3 cars to stay ahead of the GT machinery. The large amount of bronze-rated drivers and silver-rated drivers, of course, in LMP3, you're only allowed one gold-rated driver, and you can't have any platinums at all. Are we going to see the LMP3 cars intermixed with the GTD field? Kris?
Yes.
Yes, Cookie?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We will.
Kris, you reckon?
I think, yeah. I think GTD Pro, it's going to be a definite. I'll have to wait and see on GTD yet.
Okay, we will check that out. The thing I'm concerned about is we don't want LMP3 to be like the old prototype challenge class where they were effectively, rolling chicanes and roadblocks and, unfortunately, in some instances, battering rams. I think the Starworks car that took out Paul Miller Racing that one year still lives on in my memory as one of the most obnoxious moments of PC madness that I've ever seen.
It just sounds like you hate fun.
I mean, I don't like race class leaders getting taken out at one of the fastest parts of the track, but I also do hate fun. Yeah, you're right. This class is split between 2 chassis. You know, normally we've seen, LMP3 as well as LMP2 has 4 chassis tenders. But really you want to be in either the Ligier or the Duquesne. It's good to see more Duquesnes making the trip over. It's 4 Duquesnes versus 5 Ligiers. Traditionally, we've seen LMP3 as a bit of an LMP Ligier, but it's good to see a bit of variety in the chassis options, Cookie.
I mean, we'd hope, considering it's the new iteration for new regs for this, so... everybody's supposed to be on as even of a starting line as possible. So, technically we should be seeing it completely even, spread across 4 manufacturers, which we won't talk about. We still have problems getting 4 manufacturers to show up with cars anyway. But no, it is very good to see Duquesne being able to put out car numbers that will sort of try to match Ligier, at least in the IMSA series. I know ELMS and Road to Le Mans is a little bit different. I think there are quite a bit of Ligiers there, but yeah, I mean, anytime we can see more variety and more just chassis diversity in these classes, the better. And yeah, good to see that it's not just a Ligier fest in LMP3 like it is with Oreca and LMP2.
Well, keep in mind as well that the Duquesne was late to be homologated, so for its first season it ran with an additional weight penalty. But it is good to see that Duquesne has kicked on and started producing more cars. And remember, they've inherited they bought out the Norma LMP3, which was actually the faster car in a straight line. So I wonder if at Daytona, which is a lot of straights or a lot of high speed area, that the Duquesne might be more effective, Kris.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, also the good thing is that we'll kind of see the effects of that on Saturday.
Yeah,
we have a prototype challenge race on Saturday, so we'll 18 cars in the grid for I believe a 3-hour race. So we'll get to see lap times. I'm not sure how different the prototype challenge and a big IMSA LMP3 is on lap times. If there's any differences between the two, I'm sure the LMP3 gets BOP'd a little bit in the main IMSA series. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see the comparative times during Roar Weekend and see how that plays out.
So it's actually very nice because the entry list is split even perfectly between the Duquesnes and the Ligier. So we started off with 4 Duquesnes and finished with 5 Ligier. So let's crack into the entry list. Of the Duquesnes, we've got Muller Motorsports America, 47 Motorsports AWA, and a second car from Muller Motorsports America. Of course, these teams are going to be predominantly amateurs, so we're not going to necessarily know all the drivers or have all that information. We're just going to be trying to pick out interesting sort of tidbits for you. So the 2 cars from Muller Motorsports America, the 6 and the 26. The name that immediately jumps out to me there is Cameron Shields. Now that's a name that I'm familiar with because he is a Australian driver who's made the trip over. He's also driving with Charles Cruz, which is another driver that I recognize, and Hugo de Wilde.
Yeah. He raced ELMS LMP3, Hugo de Wilde.
Hugo de Wilde, this is, yep.
And the other guy, Nolan Seigel, in the 26 car we're talking about, he rode the Indy driver. He raced a couple of pilot challenge races with Carbon last year with the Audi GT4. So he experienced in Daytona. And don't forget, and let's talk about the team itself. Mueller Motorsport is a German team. They usually race the NLS with the Caymans. They won last year's prototype challenge race at Road America. They're also the defending Rolex winners in LMP3.
Oh, well, there you go.
And also, I want to talk about this dude, Moritz Kranz. I believe he's the guy who kind of brought the team over. He won last year in the Road to Le Mans for Michelin Le Mans Cup, because they also raced in the MLMC. And then you have Joel Miller, who was with the Mazda prototype when they first started, back in the Sky Active days.
Oh, wow. There you go. Going deep into the archives of that one. I am excited to see how Shields goes. He's been an open wheel driver in Australia who's made the jump over to Road to Indy. And I'm actually pretty excited for that 26 car. It's got a few properly good names in that machine. Cookie, what's your reading on these 2 cars? 6 or 26?
I mean, yeah, both have got their, I don't know, just anchors and then definitely have their kind of question marks. I would kind of lead to the 6.
Okay. The next car in the entry list is from 47 Motorsports, and this is an interesting car. I'm not familiar with 47 Motorsports as a team, but I am familiar with a few of these drivers. Mark Vam, who I've definitely seen race at Le Mans, I feel. That's definitely a name I recognize, but I also recognize the name Austin McCusker, who raced in the LMP3 class with Inter Europol when they did the Australian leg of the Asian Le Mans series, and he was a really, really interesting driver, still very young, I think, still in his very early 20s, and seemed to have a wealth of experience beyond his years, and it's good to see McCusker getting another drive, because I was worried that he'd fallen off the face of the earth a little bit with 2020 and everything, and so I'm going to keep keeping eyes on him to see how he does.
I think if I did my research right, McCusker raced with Nielsen Racing and LMP3 in ELMS last year in 2021. I could be wrong on that. Mark Gavam and Trenton Estep are also in this car, and they already raced together earlier this year with the Gulf 12 Hours in the beginning of the month.
There we go.
So, and 47 Motorsports, they're also going to be doing double duty by racing in the Prototype Challenge race this Saturday. So, I'm not sure. I don't have the exact drivers for the Prototype Challenger, so I don't know if the drivers themselves are pulling double duty, but the team itself is, and that's going to be invaluable experience.
Mark Vam he's quite an old driver though. He's in his 60s, so hope that he he's had quite clearly a very good career. Raced with the Rick Ware Racing team in the Asian Le Mans series. That was his last major drive, I think. So we'll be seeing him again. The thing that pains me most about this entry is the fact that despite being called 47 Motorsports, they are not running car number 47. and car 47 isn't even on the entry list. It's free. Why? What? Isn't that just so... Oh, wait, no, Settler is racing number 47. Okay, I guess that makes it okay. Yes.
This team is based out of the New Jersey Motorsports Park. IMSA doesn't visit it, but it's basically a road course in the northeast United States, and they just do streetcar fabrication, but they also do prep work for the track. So okay. I think it's a team that's from that area.
Brilliant. So they basically got their own test track then.
Essentially, yeah, and I think they do like preparation for like track days, stuff like that. I think for as well. So in and around motorsport, but taking the plunge in a professional standpoint now in prototype racing.
Brilliant. They've got competition though with the Canadian flagged AWA team with the number 38, also in a Duquesne, with Matt Bell, Ore Fidani, Lars Kern, and Kuno Whitman. Now those two names a long-term IMSA fan would be very familiar with. Kuno Whitmer was, in my memory, driving the Dodge.
Yep, 2014 GTD Le Mans champion with the Dodge, to be exact.
Absolutely right. And then Lars Kern, that is the Nürburgring Nordschleife track record holder, right, Lars Kern?
Production car lap holder, and also... as recently of June of last year, SUV track record holder.
Oh, Porsche, crazy bastards. That's pretty rad. Matt Bell and Ore Fidani, though, are names I'm not familiar with, as well as the team, AWA. Any light on those guys?
Yeah, so Ore Fidani, he's the rich guy. One obscure fact about him, he's the 2020 Canadian Touring Car Championship GT champion. Take that information as you wish.
Right.
Matthew Bell, 2020 Prototype Challenge champion. He raced with Cool Racing in LMP3 last year for ELMS. He won the first two races of the season and ran last year's Rolex with Win Autosport. He's also going to be racing with Nielsen and LMP2 in Asian Le Mans. And AWA, if you watch Pilot Challenge, they field the McLaren GT4 in that championship.
Okay, so that's quite a bit of IMSA clout, race preparation clout, and also a bit of international flavor and experience as well. Looking at those drivers then and their experience, you've got to say that they're pretty well placed for a victory if all things go well. Aren't you, Cookie?
Yeah, and again, like for LMP3, it's about how the pro driver can kind of blend a lot of the amateur talent around him, especially when it comes to pace setup, car setup and pace. and just how comfortable all the drivers are together. So a lot, I feel like these classes are going to be down to, yeah, sure, how the amateurs drive just from a driving standpoint, but just also from a team mesh, just to see how the pro drivers will do. And Kuna Whitmer is a great prototype driver. So yeah, it should be really good.
Okay, so they're the 4 Duquesnes on the entry list. Just pick out one for me, Kris. That's going to be the fastest Duquesne out of the 4.
I think I'm going to go with the number 13.
The AWA car that we were just talking about, Fidani, Whitmer, Kern, and Bell?
Yep.
I'd be hard-pressed to go past that one as well. I mean, I'd be excited for the number 7 or the number 26, but I think the 13 is the all-round better car. Cookie, what's your read?
Yeah, I mean, just to not sound like I'm copying you guys, but yeah, 13. I would go 13.
So we're all pretty solidly sold on the 13. They do have 5 Ligiers that they have to make their way past. Sean Creech Motorsport, Andretti Autosport, Performance Tech, Core Autosports, and Riley are going to be there for Daytona. I recognize Andretti Autosport, of course, and also Performance Tech, Core Autosports, and Riley Motorsports are team names I'm familiar with. Sean Creech Motorsport, can you shed some light on the team, Kris? I assume that you're the one with the research here.
Yeah, so they finished second in last year's Rolex. So they ran a couple of IMSA races last year, did not compete the full season. But take a look at the names they got for just being an unknown team. Dual Barbosa, multiple-time Rolex 24 winner, 2014, 2015 IMSA champion. Then you have Sebastian Priaulx, Andy Priaulx's son, 2021 Porsche Carrera Cup North America champion, and also raced British GT with the Mustang GT4. And then they had picked up a guy called Malte Jacobsen, 2019 Danish Formula 4 champion, raced with RLRM Sport in the European Le Mans Series last year. Then Lance Wilsey, he's the old dude. He's like 60 years old. He's just the guy who funds the team.
I'm interested to see Malte Jacobsen in that team because RLRM Sport have been a really popular team in the European Le Mans Series for picking up these young drivers and giving them drives to basically show their stuff. And Jacobsen has been really, really exciting. But yeah, Barbosa, Priaulx, and Jacobsen, that's a pretty formidable lineup just straight off the bat. Cookie, is it weird seeing a multiple Daytona 24-hour winner in a LMP3 car? Is that something that still is a bit odd?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely what are you doing here vibes to it, but no, I mean, as we keep seeing the maturity of this class and kind of where the the trajectory of kind of prototype racing is going, I mean, this is still very much of an AM focused category, and there are going to always require pro drivers to be in here. So yeah, I mean, it's a little surprising to see that, but at the same time, it's another class, it's another trophy to win, and I think for some of these drivers, that part of that is part of the challenge too. I mean, maybe they've won it already, but being able to coach, driver coach, and being able to kind of being the team leader for some of this stuff and in a more garagista setting is might be more palatable for some of these guys. So no, it doesn't really surprise me too much outside of just it's a surprising class to see him, but that action is not rare in sports car racing. So
yeah. You move into a sort of driver coaching role, a sort of a mentor role in that sort of sense then.
Yep. And they pays decent money too, some of them, depending on your skills.
Absolutely. Number 36 is the next car on the entry list, Andretti Autosport, featuring Jarrett Andretti as the lead driver in that car. He is a Silverado driver. He is the son of John Andretti, who is the nephew of Mario Andretti.
Yep. So, John Andretti, who unfortunately passed away, I believe, last year or 2 years ago due to colon cancer. Two-time NASCAR Cup Series winner. John is. Don't forget, Jarrett has a championship. He's a 2020 GT4 America Sprint X Silver Class champion.
There you go.
So he also raced with his team last year. Josh Burden, he's usually, if you remember back, even last year, whenever KCMG enters an endurance GT3 race, he's normally on the entry list for those cars. Not this year, but he was usually with KCMG in the past. Rasmus Lin, he ran LMP3 last year with Performance Tech. He also did part-time at Indy Lights, and he's going to do a full-time Indy Lights championship this year. His main goal is IndyCar. And then you have Gabby Chavez, who's used to race IndyCar. He's actually a 2020 TCR champion in Pilot Challenge. He ran the Rolex last year with 47, but did not finish the race.
And the interesting thing about this car is that it doesn't have a bronze, because Jarrett, Josh, and Gabby Chavez are under 30 years of age. They are able to be classified in that category as a silver driver, so all three of them, and so they don't actually have to run with a bronze driver, which is super duper interesting. I am actually interested to see how Burton does, of course, as the Australian is very interested. He does have the bit of infamy in my mind of being the fastest car in practice 1 of the Bathurst 12 Hour in 2020, and also being the first car written off at the Bathurst 12 Hour in 2020 after he crashed not 2 laps after setting that fastest lap, and wrote the car off for the weekend. So hopefully he has a better run at Daytona. Interesting that this car has 3 silvers, Cookie. Do you reckon that gives them a leg up over the rest of the competition, where they've got who have bronze drivers that they have to fit their schedule around?
Yeah, potentially, but silver and bronze sometimes really with these can be interchangeable with pace ultimately, and again, just the team mesh and how comfortable each driver is in the car. I mean, you could even have a gold or silver driver really just be uncomfortable and not feel okay enough to potentially be competing under a bronze. But again, a lot of this is just is going to be background and really, and how the pace of the team is, next week. So, I mean, they definitely could have a leg up with just having silvers and no bronze, but I don't know. It's not a metric that I try to use anymore, because ultimately it doesn't seem like it pans out all the time. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, there could be absolutely an advantage with that, but I don't know. I don't see it as much anymore as I used to.
Fair enough. 3 more cars on the entry list for Daytona. Performance Tech. No names I really recognize except for Garrett Grist in this machine. He will be with Hikaru Abe, Daniel Goldberg, and Nico Pino, who seems to be from the Euro Formula Open Championship. Any read on any of those guys besides Garrett Grist?
Dan Goldberg, he's the rich dude. Hikaru Abe is an interesting character, because when trying to research him, the only thing that popped up was that he's 34 years old. He raced Formula Challenge Japan in 2008, and nothing since. But then I found more, and he actually raced Formula 4 Japan last year, I think in part of the Masters category. So he's just kind of a guy who might kind of take a break from racing, I think, and kind of getting back into it. Nico Pino, he ran British F4 in 2020, and he ran LMP3 for Inter Europol for the last 2 races of the European Le Mans Series Championship.
So not a team that we're expecting huge things from then in that respect. 2 bronzes is going to make that difficult, Cookie. Even though you don't see driver ratings anymore, apparently.
Yeah, no, I really I'm inclusive with my driver talent. So that's how I try to view this. But yeah, no, these guys are going to have more of a shot than anybody else because they're bronze. But no, Garrett Grist, he's a solid former drag speed driver. So otherwise, I don't know too much more about the other drivers beyond a couple of those names. They're
going to be a really big unknown then, considering the fact that we haven't really been able to see any of those drivers in a recent sort of setting to get a good read on where they stand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another team
not going to put them up on the podium for them. So
you are? Oh, you're not?
No.
Okay.
I was like, I should, but no, I'm not.
Mad lad. Another team running 2 bronzes, which we might consider to have a bit more of a shot, is Core Autosports, making their return to the championship. Of course, Core Autosports is John Bennett, and he will be enlisting the help of Colin Braun once again. And they'll be joined with George Kurtz and Nick Johnson, who I believe is someone who used to drive with Tracy Crone. Is that correct? Is that the right Nick Johnson that I'm thinking of?
They're both Swedish. I believe you're right. 54-year-old guy.
Yep, that's the one.
Yep.
Tracy Crone's partner in crime, so to speak. Colin Braun and John Bennett, they're a pair that we're very familiar with for the IMSA fraternity. They almost actually took the prototype championship in 2017, falling at the very last hurdle, losing to, I believe it was the Action Express team at Petit Le Mans. Great to see them back in the field, and great to see Colin Braun get another chance. It seems like he's forever in purgatory with finding a good drive, but if he can continue to do good things with Core Autosports, I'm very happy for him.
Yeah, so he raced. At least he had something to drive last year. He raced GT World Challenge America in the Pro-Am class with DXDT, and that explains the George Kurtz in the car, since George Kurtz also ran with DXDT last year in the championship, and George Kurtz is the CEO of CrowdStrike. So that's probably where, if you ever heard of CrowdStrike, I know they sponsored the Formula One coverage in the United States. They're on Mercedes F1 car, and they're normal. And George Kurtz is normally at Thunderhill every year with a Radical. I don't know if he still does that anymore, but yeah, he's getting more and more into these top tier races. I know he was at Spa last year with SPS Automotive. So he's getting himself up there in the world of sports, of top tier sports car racing.
And Core Autosports are like a favorite team of the IMSA paddock cookie. They've had mixed results at Daytona. What's your favorite Core Autosports memory?
Yeah, it was when they impacted the wall with less than 30 minutes to go in LMPC.
While on fire.
While on fire, somebody they crashed so hard that half the chat thought the car went airborne somehow. And so yeah, I'll say that one. Or just any of the Flexbox liveries.
Flexbox, classic.
Yeah. So no, yeah. But Colin Braun and John Bennett are a classic duo. They've been together forever. And honestly, they have cut their teeth in this kind of stuff. Prototype Challenge and LMP3 has kind of been their bread and butter, at least for what John Bennett's comfortable with and what he can be successful in. So, and Colin Braun is just ridiculously quick. So, love 54.
Absolutely. I reckon you've hit the nail on the head there with John Bennett. He's a driver that has found the limit of his talent and is very, very well set there. I feel like if he tries to do LMP2 again, it might be something that will be a bit too beyond his reach. And that's not to say, like, I know that sounds pretty, like, negative, but it's knowing his own limits and being able to effectively drive around them. So while they did get very, very close the year that he did run in LMP2 with Colin Braun, you got to say that Braun basically dragged that car into a champion position off his own back entirely.
Yeah, and the strategy too. I mean, like let's not forget too that his father behind the pit box was orchestrating a lot of that. Just just ballet to get Bennett the time that he needed to behind the seat, but not costing too much overall times that Colin couldn't make it back up again. So I mean, they play masterful strategy, and if it comes down to it with strategy, they'll do a very good job in LMP3.
And the little tidbit: Colin Braun is a NASCAR Camping World Truck Series winner.
Well, there you go. A nice little tidbit to end off our discussion on Core Autosport. The last car on the entry list for LMP3 and the last prototype car on the entry list is the number 74 Riley Motorsports machine, featuring Guy Robinson, Felipe Fraga, Kay Van Berlo, and Michael Cooper. Now, I'm familiar with Felipe Fraga. He's been driving with Riley Motorsports and with Ben Keating across a bunch of different series. A very, very good driver. Originally got his start in Stock Car Brazil, I believe. Guy Robinson is someone I remember, I believe, with Pfaff Motorsport as the silver driver there for a little while. And then Kay Van Berlo and Michael Cooper are two names I am not familiar with. Also, by the way, no bronze in this car. So maybe another chance for them to maybe get a leg up on some of the other teams. But Kris, you read on Riley Motorsports, Van Berlo and Cooper, where do they rank in the realm of silvers?
Well, I'll talk about Gar Robinson first. He was the sole LMP3 champion last year in IMSA. He's also a multiple-time Trans Am 2 champion. That's where he races full-time in, and also, obviously, IMSA now. Kay Van Berlo, he's a very new driver. He finished second in last year's Porsche Carrera Cup North America Championship. So Michael Cooper, I would rate above Berlo because he's a multiple-time Pirelli World Challenge champion in multiple classes, GT4 America champion, and he's usually found racing in SRO America, and maybe Pilot Challenge when they have the Camaros.
Cool. So quite a fair bit of experience then based in the US for those guys. Cookie, where does this rate on Riley Motorsports ranking of drivers? Do you think they've got the same sort of power that they've had in the past, or is that better for them or worse for them? They didn't quite have the race that they were looking for last year. I believe they DNF'd last year, but do you think that they've got the right stuff to put a better challenge together this year?
Yeah, I mean, Felipe Fraga is no slouch, and yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar a ton with some of the drivers that they've got in here, but I know Michael Cooper is decent as well behind the wheel. So yeah, it's a decent go at it. I'm not blown away by anything on their lineup, but a lot of times too, that's kind of the formula to win too, is just to have a go under the radar a little bit with some of this stuff, including your own drivers, so that you don't have this too high of expectations to go into the weekend. So yeah, I think they have a shot to do some damage in LMP3. No pun intended with that either. I don't think they're going to crash everybody.
And another interesting thing, Michael Cooper, before Pirelli World Challenge got fully engulfed by SRO America, he was the one racing the Cadillac program that they had there. So
yeah, that weird GTSV, was that the one?
Yeah, the Cadillac GT sort of 3.
The weird one. So that's the 9-car LMP3 field. We were all pretty sold on the number 13 when it came to the Ducanes. Of the Ligiers, of the 5 Ligiers we've talked about, which one do you guys think, we'll go with Cookie first to put him on the spot, is the one to beat, the one to put the best challenge together?
I'll say Core Autosport.
Core Autosport, Bennett, Braun, Kurtz, and Johnson.
But I will also give a nod to the Milner Motorsports as well. I think they've got, just the fact that they've got 2 cars in their stable, and decent talent with them. Yeah, but I'm going to go 54.
54, fair enough. Kris,
for the Ligiers, I think it's down to the 74 or the 36.
So the Riley Motorsports and the Andretti Autosports machines?
Yeah, and I see Andretti, they got some promising talent. Obviously, Jarrett Andretti, he's not too bad. Rasmus Lind, upcoming Gabby Chavez. He wasn't exactly bad, is what I remember. But I think I would have to lean towards the 74 here. I think it's too strong to miss.
Fair enough. I'm actually going to agree with you on the 36. I think that's going to be the fastest of the Ligiers. But of the LMP3 class, I'm actually going to put my money on the number 13. I reckon the AWA Duquesne is going to be the car to beat for the weekend. Any protestations?
No.
At the very
it's a gutsy call.
It is a gutsy call. At the very end, though, I hope that we don't see too many incidents with this class. You know, the old prototype challenge class, which the LMP3s have replaced, did have a reputation at the very end of being mobile chicanes, and I hope that this doesn't. It's not a reputation that continues into the LMP3 machines. So far, we haven't seen it.
Last year, Flood. If I'm gonna counterpoint, I don't think LMP3s caused a single caution at all last year during the Rolex.
That wouldn't surprise me. There were how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 6 of them on the entry. 7 of them on the entry list, though, which is pretty close to what we've got now. But there was also only less than 50 cars over the course of the whole event, which I mean, like, is still not a small amount, but it is still enough of a difference in terms of track density, I think.
Agreed. Yeah. And I mean, that could be an outlier too. That last year we didn't have any. Yeah. it's I don't know. It's LMP3, it's LMPC, as we like to say. So the sparks will fly.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting little position for these classes to be in. So that's the prototype cars, guys. Of the 3 classes, of course, most eyes are going to be on the overall. But what's the one car that you're going to be keeping an eye on, even if you don't expect it to win? Kris, what do you reckon? The one car out of the prototypes that you want to keep an eye on, despite what the result might be?
I think I'm going to focus on the Racing Team Netherlands car, because obviously seeing a European team do well, I think that would maybe help some more European teams come over to IMSA if they see another team of theirs do very well. And I think having more European IMSA team or European teams in IMSA, I think that as long as it doesn't hurt the homegrown teams, the talent we have here, I think it's a fantastic thing.
Good point. What about you, Cookie?
Let's say the number 48.
The Ally Cadillac.
Yep.
Nice. That is going to be a pretty stacked lineup, though. Are you sure you're just not after that for a result?
No, I mean, it's more or less like will they underperform? So
okay.
It's more like that car should be in the top 5 at all times, and last year it was the same kind of deal where I'm like, it has every right to be up there, but the team's sort of slightly being new, and then also Jimmy Johnson in there, so they weren't performing as well. I'm definitely curious to see how the Jimmy Johnson year 2 experiment goes with that car. So
cool. I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the number 20, the high-class racing car. I think I'm excited by every single driver in that lineup, and I hope they do well. Fantastic. Well, we're going to take a bit of a break here. Well, this is going to be the end of the episode for you listening at home. I hope you've enjoyed our preview of the Daytona 24 and the prototype categories. Well, join us for part 2, which will be released at some point in the very, very near future, taking your way through all the GTD machines, of which there are 35, and oh my gosh, it's going to be so good. Thank you very much for listening. Stacked indeed. Thank you very much for listening. I've been Michael Zalavari. Peace out.
Gazoo.
Okay. Are we ready to go?
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
You ready to go? Okay. Awesome. Oh, sorry, I just have to stretch.
Okay. No, okay.
Okay. Cookie, shut up. Every fucking time.
I'm sorry, you caught me a ticket shit out of my oven.
Classic. Out of fucking hell, Kris.
Hold on, I got my notes on my laptop. I'll be there soon.
Brilliant.
Rip.
Who cooks food during the middle of a podcast? Honestly.
I've done it before, and I'm not going to say which ones, but I feel like you would know just because like they were shitty. Guys, just stop derailing this podcast. And
I mean,
can we
can we
talk
really
about the
help
Daytona
at this
24
point?
Hours of Daytona for 2022?
This has been...
I mean, come on. I come on this podcast all the time, and it's nothing but derailment from everyone else. And honestly,
it's always Todd's fault, right?
Ah, brilliant. Okay, we've got that out of our system. Let's do it for real.
oh, are we doing another take? Or,
Yeah, just like last time.